as Donald Trump blows out the candles on his 78th birthday, and the microscope is closely focused on the physical decline of Joe Biden. What part will the age factor play on the US election in November? Joining me now is Professor of Political Science at the University of California, Louis Desipio. Louis, we're sort of uncharted territory in a way, because in past elections, particularly if we look historically, this whole age thing hasn't been any significant factor.
That's absolutely right. We've never had two candidates this old. Whichever one is inaugurated, if he serves out his term, will be the oldest president. It's alienating younger voters, and I think they are the electorate that is most the target of both campaigns at this point.
And it's interesting that both are using tactical ways to try and attract the younger voter. Now you've got President Biden in California, in Hollywood, in Tinseltown, and then you've got Donald Trump talking to TikTok stars.
They each realize that they have to reach an audience that they don't have a natural affinity with. Ultimately, I think the Biden campaign has signaled that it's running the stronger campaign. It's opening offices in about 200 communities with local level activists to reach out to the younger voters. I think that will work better to get people who actually turn out to the polls than speaking to TikTok stars. That said, if former President Trump can make some inroads, particularly with minority voters, that can play big in those battleground states.
You live and breathe this stuff, Professor. I will ask you about both. What's your assessment? Where do you think Joe Biden's at? There's such a, because he's had that speech impediment his whole life. So there's that to one side of things. Let's have a look at Joe Biden first.
Well, I think President Biden is showing his age. And that's a concern, I think, for the American people. People say that at a one-on-one level, he does fine, but certainly sometimes he seems to walk uncomfortably and doesn't always hear quite as clearly as he could. I think it will be central for the Biden campaign to demonstrate his vitality throughout the campaign, and we'll see that most in the debate that's coming up.
And Donald Trump, he's only a few weeks away from finding out his fate in that New York court as well. He did blow out the candles on his 78th birthday, just a couple of years shy now of 80.
Yeah. President Trump has always spoken in a sort of non-traditional manner for a political leader. So it's always hard to tell with him if this is just Trump being Trump or his connections to some of the events that he's talking about are a little less clear. His recent conversation about electric boats was very hard to follow. So I think people are concerned about both candidates. But as I say, it's a little bit harder to measure with former President Trump because he's never been the clearest speaker.
Interesting times economically. You speak to some people on the ground in the US, they'll say they're not happy at all with the economy, but some of the figures that are coming through, particularly in and around inflation, are positive and strong, particularly for the sitting president.
Yes, in a normal election year, President Biden would be doing very well right now, recovering from the slump of COVID, bringing inflation down, massive investment in infrastructure, which no president had been able to achieve in the last 40 years. The challenge is that at the individual level, the cost of inflation is still there. People know what things cost 3 or 4 years ago, and they know that they're 20% more right now. And that's very hard for sort of more people more marginally in the economic system. And those are the voters that have traditionally voted Democrat and have been moving to the Republican Party over the last few years. And they're probably going to move a little bit quicker because of concerns about their pocketbooks, not the macro economy, which is doing quite well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, on the international front, Mr. Biden, Anthony Blinken, military chiefs working overtime to find peace in Gaza for a number of reasons, not the least of those, it doesn't look good in an election year.
Certainly not. I mean, we haven't had a president facing 2 wars abroad, not to forget Ukraine, of course, during his term. Those young voters that President Biden is having trouble reaching, in part because of his age and seeming disconnection from some events that are real in their lives, are also disconnected because of a greater support than for Palestinians and for the Gaza cause than among older voters. I think President Biden, both as a world leader who wants world peace and as a political leader who realizes that Gaza and Palestine are dividing the Democratic Party, would like to bring this conflict to a close, or at least to slow it down throughout the rest of the election year.
Yeah, absolutely. Professor Louis Desipio, always great to chat. Thank you.